The radical left rampaging across the country over Roe versus Wade, while Democrats attack the Supreme Court's legitimacy. The FBI is investigating after pro-abortion extremists torched a pro-life Colorado pregnancy center, leaving behind graffiti that says, "If abortions aren't safe, neither are you." In Los Angeles, a man is facing possible attempted murder charges after attacking a cop with a makeshift flamethrower during a protest over there. And total chaos in Phoenix, where Arizona lawmakers say they were held hostage by an angry crowd outside the state capitol. Police eventually had to use tear gas to clear them out. Democrats in Congress echoing the fury by pushing for drastic measures against the Supreme Court.
Do you think lying at a confirmation hearing is an impeachable offense?
I believe so.
Okay.
I believe so. I believe lying under oath is an impeachable offense.
This court has lost legitimacy. I believe we need to get some confidence back in our court, and that means we need more justices on the United States Supreme Court.
And while Democrats push the White House to act, the best they're going to get is a Kamala photo op. The vice president's getting brutally mocked by liberals for this photo she posted of herself just watching the ruling. All right, Danny, you've had the weekend to kind of take it all in. Yes. What do you think here on a Monday?
Well, it's interesting. I just want to add one other thing to the violence over the weekend. So in Vermont, there was actually attacks on the state capitol with vandalism, graffiti. The thing is that Vermont, in just 2019, passed a law so that in the state of Vermont, there is a codified right in the state constitution for a woman to have the right to choose and the right to have an abortion. So I don't know why are they attacking the state capitol in Vermont? That doesn't make any sense. But that also, I think, over the weekend, not only did we think about it, but I think it's hard to tell exactly how this is going to play out in the long run. Emotions running super high, especially on the left. I am a little surprised that the pro-choice forces seem a little unclear as to what they're going to do next. They had ample warning. The draft opinion had been out there for about 55 days. There are state legislatures that are going to be taking up this issue. There are lawsuits already happening, but also as people start to realize that, as these decisions go back to the states, if you are in XYZ state, nothing changes for you. Now, is it possible that liberal women in New York are going to be really upset about the women losing right to choose in a state like Mississippi? It's possible. Will that motivate them to vote? Yes, but they vote in New York.
Right.
So I don't know practically how that's going to turn out. I do think that this will help the Democrats at least a little bit with suburban women.
And fundraising.
And certainly fundraising. This does not help Republicans in the fundraising front, as I did a little research in that today, that inflation is starting to take a bite out of the small dollar fundraising on both sides, but really on the right. But this issue for Democrats, they'll raise a ton of money from celebrities. But if you think back, in March of 2021, Texas passed their abortion law. And remember, there was all the conundrum. There was a huge fuss. But national polling on abortion didn't change at all. So I'm open-minded and looking at it. And I'll just say one last thing. One of the reasons Ruth Bader Ginsburg was very frustrated with the Roe v. Wade decision is that up until then, in 1972, the state legislatures were moving forward to try to do what Vermont just did. Vermont in 2019 said, okay, in the state legislature, in the state constitution, women's right to abortion is there. That all stopped. All that activity in the states really stopped when they came up with the idea that there was this right to privacy in the Constitution. Now that's over, and the fight will continue, hopefully more peacefully than what we saw over the weekend.
Greg, were these mostly peaceful protests over the weekend?
I was talking to Dana about this just moments ago. Maybe it's me after 3 years of lawlessness and just seeing crap every day that I thought this was much less than a night of rage, and that could just be on my own subjective opinion comparing, and I could be definitely wrong because I'm not there. But I guess the visual spectacle of this was not what I think the media wished it could be. I think that the reason why they were so playing down the stuff that was going on in front of the Supreme Court justices' homes is hoping that intimidation and the threat of a mob, of an angry, vengeful mob would somehow change things, and it didn't. I think, too, it's interesting, a lot of the protests are in cities that aren't going to be affected by it. Yeah. And so I think what you're going to see is just a lot of kind of like this. There's a lot of ignorance going around. A lot of people don't know what this means. I love hearing, famous liberals renouncing their citizenship. Well, good luck finding a country that has abortion on demand like the United States. If you look at any map of Europe, you're going to find out that most countries in Western Europe and elsewhere are like pretty much more strict. Then there's this complaint about, Republicans want you to be born, but they don't want to care about you when you're born. This is what the lady from The View said. But the evidence right now is totally in reverse. Who's outspoken on crime, right? Who's outspoken on black crime? Who's outspoken on the price of gas and the price of baby formula, the economy? Who's talking about school choice? Who's worried about kids being trapped in terrible schools, the lockdown economy? It wasn't Democrats or teachers' unions. It was the Republicans. So if you want to talk about responsibility of people who are born, Republicans have been there all along. It's just you didn't like the grim truth of what you were protecting.
When you heard some of the politicians out there on the shows talking about packing the court and impeaching the justices, do you think that's going anywhere?
No. Well, first of all, there is this miscalculation. People don't understand that what happened with the Dobbs decision was that the court said that there is no constitutional right to an abortion. They never said abortions are illegal. They never said that they are unconstitutional. They just said you don't have a constitutional right to them. So all you folks that talk about, all of this stuff is tearing down democracy and we've got to protect democracy. Well, why don't you learn a little about democracy, get together and now fight for it in the state legislatures where you will make a difference as to whether or not abortions will be legal or not. That is the essence of democracy. The idea of saying that these justices, as AOC said, lied. I mean, I think that one of the complaints had to do with a personal discussion in one of the senator's office. First of all, this is the same thing that all liberal justices have said. Under Article 3 of the Constitution, they are to decide cases and controversies. You are not, when you appear before a Senate committee, deciding a case or a controversy. You're going to say, I will decide this case based upon the facts and the law as presented to me. I will not prejudge any situation because then you're going to vote for me. And I did the same thing as a judge. People would say to me, well, how do you feel about this crime or that crime or this? Well, no, I will do my job as best I can to substantiate those crimes and those laws that have to be protected as a judge. Now, none of these justices said that precedent could not be overturned. None of them said that. There was no lie. And the essence of where we are now is that they're just bad. They don't like the results, so they want to change the rules of the game. And so they want to pack the court, which is ridiculous, because then the court is nothing other than a legislative branch that reflects the rule of the mob. The left doesn't know how absurd they look. They're fighting. They're having these hissy fits. Every time they don't like something, they hit the streets. They become violent in the summer of 2020. It's just they're losing credibility as opposed to complaining about the Supreme Court losing legitimacy.
Take it home, Harold Ford Jr.
So the violence, I never understand why people engage in violence too, and it goes on both sides. There were people who blew up abortion clinics or places over the years where abortions were performed, and now you have people out doing this. I don't know how you're going to make a difference engaging in violence. I think peaceful protesting is fine, but the violence is inexcusable and they should be prosecuted. When it comes to the polling, one of the things that really disturbs me in all of this is right after this decision, SCOTUS's approval rating dropped to 25%. Now, in the legislative and executive branch, you expect those numbers to fluctuate. That's a low number. Even for President Biden, that's a low number. For Congress, that's a low number. But at least you have elections every 2 years for the Congress, 4 years for the president, obviously 6 years for the Senate. Judge, you talked about being a judge and some of the things that you talked about. So many of our judges in this country are elected. So when they say they're going to do certain things and they don't do them, voters are able to go and unelect them. I'm with you. I don't think we should pack the court, but I got to tell you, and the majority of the country agrees with you as well. It'll be interesting to see where that goes. In addition, I think that the larger question for me is, and Jesse, I think I've heard you say something on the show about it. I think when you look at 15 to 20 weeks for a woman to be able to get an abortion, I think there's a wide acceptance of that. I think when President Clinton said rare, legal, and safe, unfortunately, that middle of the road position on this issue is largely unrepresented in politics. You have those who don't want it at all, and you have those who want it on demand. I think the question that we will get back to from an electoral standpoint will be that. Now, what alarms Democrats, I think, and alarms me more so than the decision was alarming, but as you give this all back to the states, is what Justice Thomas said in his concurring opinion about privacy and the expectation of it, and the fact the Constitution does not specifically enumerate protections on certain things, contraceptions being one of them, or even your digital identity. I think if Democrats are smart for the long term, you launch an effort to try to say, look, maybe there's an amendment to the Constitution that we need to have that enumerates privacy. And we enumerate privacy from the standpoint for families, for women, and let that debate happen. And I'm willing to let that debate, and I have thoughts on it. I'm sure we all do. But Democrats need to do what the Federalist Society did 50 years ago when they wanted to overturn Roe, when it was a central part of what some of these groups wanted to do. Lay out a plan for the long term. And in the short term, the violence doesn't work. Lay out what the concern should be, not just for women, but for men, because there were men who supported the Federalist Society, much like there are women who support this decision. I hope we don't engage in any more violence. And I remind everybody, Justice Roberts made this a 5-4 decision to overturn Roe, 6-3 decision on the Mississippi law, which is where I wish the court had stayed.
Great conversation. I'm very impressed with each and every one of you.
Thank you.
Very well done.
We are of you, Jesse.
You were so lucky to lead this.
Coming up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.